Alright, welcome back to another Historic Pauper video. So, with the Midweek Magic coming up, and it's going to be Historic Pauper, I just want to give everyone a quick overview of most of the staple cards in Historic Pauper. So, we're going to start with White here. White in Historic Pauper is mainly characterized by their flyers, their situational removal, and then they also have some grindy cards. So I've conflated a lot of the 1 mana flyers here, but Battlefield Raptor and Healer's Hawk are most of the choices that people usually take. Um, Parametrist Blessing is a great 1 mana protection spell. It just makes sure that you have the tempo and can push through damage as well. Selfless Cathar, this is just a payoff for going wide. You sacrifice it and you get an Anthem effect. Sentinel's Eyes, this combos with Parametras, just making sure you always have an aura to cast because you can escape it out of your graveyard. It's just a great enabler. Soul Warden is just a great card. It just makes it so hard to fight you on the ground with creatures because you just incidentally gain a ton of life. So Star Pupil, this is probably more of an honorable mention than an actual staple, but there is a counter theme in White that is pretty good. You can make a lot of really big bodies really quickly. Thraben Inspector, another great card, just great stats for 1 mana, 1/2, and also makes a clue token that's just so useful. So, in the same vein, there is Spirited Companion, which is a cantrip creature. And then Core Skyfisher, just great stats and a really relevant effect. Dawnbringer Cleric, this is more of a sideboard card, but it's just so versatile and you can bounce it with Core Skyfisher. It's just a great card in your sideboard. So here I'm going to take out some of the situational removal here. I think these 4 cards, along with Angelic Purge, represent pretty much your choices in White. Angelic Purge is 3 mana, and basically it's a catch-all for artifacts, creatures, enchantments. You have your situational removal here from White. I'm sure everyone is very familiar with the destroy target tapped or attacking creatures in White. Notably, You Hear Something on Watch is really good because you can choose the option to give all your creatures +1/+1. So it's really good defensively and offensively. And then I believe Reprobation is the enchantment removal of choice, mostly because of the loses all abilities text. Alright, so we also have Momentary Blink, and this is basically our Ephemerate in Historic Pauper. I think Ephemerate is too strong for common, but this card is obviously not as good as Ephemerate, but it does its best impression in Historic Pauper. Priest of Ancient Lore, similar to Spirited Companion, just a great body that also draws you a card. Heliods Pilgrim, it just goes with the aura packages. It lets you tutor up your Reprobation, for example. Just a good card. Celestial Unicorn. So this is our, I guess, one of the life gain payoffs. It just turns into a really big body really quickly, especially if you get a bunch of Soul Warden triggers. So Late to Dinner, it probably goes with the Momentary Blink, but this is our reanimation card of choice. 4 mana, reanimate a creature. The food token is also quite relevant. So this one, Seraph of Dawn is mostly a honorable mention, I believe. So this card is mainly good just for the slower decks to just stabilize. Flying Lifelink 2/4 just happens to be a really good stat line and body in Historic Pauper. The lifelink basically just stabilizes you. One of the other Daybreak Chimera, one of the other flying payoffs, just 3 mana or 2 mana, 3/3. So, and in here I have Disciple of the Sun and Pillar Drop Rescuer. These two are quite similar. You get 2/2 flying life, 2/2 flying or 3/3 lifelink, and basically it just lets you recur cards and grind through recursion. Notably, Disciple of the Sun gets back some of your Omen of the Sun, for example. Return target permanent card, whereas Pillar Drop only returns creatures. And then Soul of Migration, I believe this is the big grindy creature of choice. You just get a ton of bodies. You can invoke it F4 instead, put it into a graveyard for your late to dinner. This is from Modern Horizons, and it's just a great card. All right, so that was white. Let's move on to blue. So in Historic Pauper, first of all, Mystic Sanctuary is legal, and I think everyone knows just how good this card is. You can't fetch it in Historic Pauper, but you can just play it late game, get back an instant or sorcery, a really good spell, and it's just such a strong land, especially taking up your land slot. Only blue and black with Bajuka Bog really have those utility lands that just are like extra free spells in your deck. So here we have the ninja package, which I forgot to add the other ninja. So let me find this real quick. So yeah, in Historic Pauper you have the fairies and ninja package, but most notably you're missing Spell Stutter Sprite, which is really good, of course. But this package is really good. You have flying attackers, you drawing cards. It's a great stuff. So here is some of the interaction in Historic Pauper. Blink of an Eye. There's also 1 mana bounce spells. I like Blink or Royal Eruption. They're functionally identical. Mainly because you can kick it to draw a card. Frantic Inventory is a hard draw spell. Lofty Denial and Disruption Protocol are the counter spells at 2 mana. I believe in New Capenna they're printing another one. Secrets of the Golden City, another hard draw spell similar to Frantic Inventory. Metallic Rebuke is another cheap counter spell. Most of the time, playing it as Mana Leak is just so good. And then also in blue, it's technically Izzet, but Goblin Electromancer, just a great card to make all your spells cheaper. And then in Historic Pauper, blue is also characterized by these two cantrip creatures. Cloudkin Seer, just a 2-power flyer. It's just so strong to get attacks in while also drawing a card. Seagate Oracle, 1/3 body. 1/3 is a really good stat line because most of the removal does 2 damage. Most of the 1 mana removal does 2 damage. And you get to draw a card as well. It's just a great card. Distant Melody, one of the payoffs for going tribal, is in Historic Pauper. And Serpentine Curve, another just very efficient threat maker. It it's quite easy to make it like a 6/6 or even a 7/7. And then you can also have decks where you fling a 20/20 curve. Organ Hoarder, Muldrifter, I think these are just very obvious, really good cards. Muldrifter is just an all-star 2/2 flyer that draws you 2 cards, and then Organ Hoarder gets you some selection while also filling up your graveyard. And then to round out blue in Historic Pauper, I have some big mana creatures. Striped Riverwinder, I believe, is the hexproof choice, mainly because of the cycling. You get rid of it early, late game you can play it. 5/5 is often the biggest monster on the board. Gearseeker Serpent, some payoff for affinity, and the unblockable clause is often really good. And then Mirror Shell Crab. This crab hasn't gotten that much traction. 3 mana to mana leak something is good, but often it's not the best card in your deck. So this is more of an honorable mention, I believe. But it is a good card. I'm sure it'll see play in the future. That wraps up the blue staples. Let's move on to red. Let's move on to black. We're going Wooburg order, right? All right, so black, I want to start with Bojuka Bog. Bojuka Bog and Mystic Sanctuary. These are mainly the 2 utility lands of choice. They're just really good effects, and they're almost free in your mana base. So black does have a black burn deck with that I would characterize Serrated Scorpion and Okiba Reckoner Raid. It's pretty good. It's something you have to keep an eye out for, of course. There is Duress as well, but Duress is not as good in Historic Pauper, mainly because Historic Pauper is very creature focused, just because of the design of commons on Arena. Blood Fountain, this is more of an honorable mention. I'm going to put it in the sideboard here. Just having 2 artifacts for 1 mana is really good. I don't think Affinity is quite there yet, but this is something to keep an eye on. Alright, so here I'm going to just take out all the black removal. Black, you get really good removal. So Feed the Swarm catches enchantments, but you do lose life. Grasp of Darkness is often a murder. -4/-4 for 2 mana is just so efficient. Obnixious Cruelty, similar to Grasp of Darkness, it's often a murder, and the exile is very relevant usually. Farika's Libation, this is not quite Chainer's Edict, but I believe it is the edict of choice. And then Suffocating Fumes is one of the only board wipes. Red also gets a 1 damage board wipe, but this one you do get to cycle it at the cost of costing 3 mana. Priest of the Haunted Edge, this is more of an honorable mention, I believe. It is mainly a removal spell, but it does have a relevant 0/4 zombie body, and it shows up in a lot of places because you can recur it out of the graveyard. You can save it up an early game or late game where you have maybe 6, 7, 8 snowlands. That's pretty good. Black also has the discard creatures and the cantrip creatures here, just for some card advantage. Sovereign's Bite, this is actually part of the Black Burn deck. So I've taken out Virus Beetle, Phyrexian Rager, and First Sphere Gargantua, but there are a couple similar cantrip or discard creatures here. Putrid Goblin, I put this in mainly because of the Mogwarts combo. There is first day of class, Putrid Goblin, Skirk Prospector, and that lets you infinitely sack Putrid Goblin. And then you have a variety of kill spells. I believe Fuming Effigy is the Historic Pauper kill spell of choice, just because each time you sacrifice it, it does come back out of the graveyard and it pings your opponent. Deadly Dispute, this is just a great card. Even in Vintage Pauper, you know, it draws you cards, it gives you back a mana, it gives you back an artifact. It's a good card. And then I also wanted to take out Marauding Blight Priest. This is a very unique effect, and it's one of the main payoffs for gaining life. Every time you gain life, your opponent loses life. You're just gonna ping them to death while you're making it harder to kill yourself. And then finally, these two honorable mentions. Gem Palm is probably more of a staple than an honorable mention, but Ballad Omnivore. For people who like the sacrifice life, this is one of the better payoffs. It's pretty much impossible to block against this because you can grow this, you can have black removal spells. Gem Palm Polluter is basically the soul of the zombie deck. Just make your opponent lose like 4 life while you draw cards. It's just so good. I do want to take out Davriel's Withering. So this is a historic legal card where the target creature gets perpetual -1, -2. So we don't quite have Disfigure in Historic Pauper, but this does a very good impression of it. Alright, so that's the Black Pauper staples. Pretty diverse and pretty strong effects in black. Alright, so after black is red. So the Pauper staples in red are pretty good. There is a variety of aggressive red 1-drops. I chose Voldaren Epicure, mainly because this card just gets you a body, it gets you a ping, and it gets you a blood token, which the artifact matters, the redraw matters. Everything about this card is pretty good. But there are a variety of red 1-drops that you can choose. So here, Frostbite, I'm going to put right here. Scorching Dragonfire, Skewer the Critics, and I guess End the Festivities and Cosmotronic Wave. So this is just a sample of the red removal. Red is one of the colors that are blessed with removal spells. Frostbite is my favorite mainly because it does 3 damage. 3 damage is really, really relevant in all the creature combats, and basically it's the bolt test, right? Scorching Dragonfire, mainly for the exile clause, and then Skewer the Critics, mainly because it's a bolt with spectacle. End the Festivities is the board wipe of choice, and I put in Cosmotronic Wave for those mid-range red players. This card is a 1 damage board wipe at worst. But it is pretty bad. 4 mana is a lot to pay for that. But creatures your opponents control can't block this turn. You can often just set up an Alpha Strike with Cosmotronic Wave and win the game. Perfect for the mid-range red decks. So red also has some really good cards. First Day of Class, I put this in because of the Mogwarts combo. But there is also the Chatterstorm combo in Historic Pauper. Experimental Synthesizer, Reckless Impulse, these are really good red draw spells. I guess they're red impulse spells, right? And then I also have this collection of 2-drops here. Thermal Alchemist, Kiln Fiend, and Flame Breather. The Red Burns deck is really, really strong, in my opinion. And these 3 cards are part of the ways you can build it. Obviously, Kiln Fiend is a lot more explosive, but you do have to attack with it. Flame Breather and Thermal Alchemist, you can just ping opponents out from like silly amounts of life. All right, moving on. I have these two goblins. They're multicolored instead of red, but I believe they're relevant in red. So I do put them in red. Notably, I love this card, Goblin and Archamancer. I have a Gruul midrange deck in Historic Pauper that I love to play. Igneous Elemental and Flurry of Horns. These two are another mid-range red cards. Flurry of Horns just giving you two 3s, which is a really relevant stat line. Just a great card. Igneous Elemental doing its best Flame Tongue Kavu impression. You do have to have a land card in your graveyard, and it only does 2 damage. So it is much worse, but it's definitely a really good card. And finally, honorable mention, Cleaving Sliver. This is one of the Sliver payoffs. I don't think Slivers are quite there, but it is really strong if you have your nut hand. Okay, moving on from red. Let's go to green. So, green, as you can expect, has a lot of big bodies, and I forgot about Colony Garden, but it is pretty relevant. Just another utility land that's not quite as good as the other two, but it does give you a token. Green has elves, of course, just Llanowar Elves and Jasper Sentinel. There are a couple others, but mostly these two are the ones you look at first. Llanowar Elves is just so good, and Jasper Sentinel has reach, which is very relevant against the white flyers. Glimmerbarn, this is an honorable mention. I've been trying to brew a deck around this. It hasn't quite gotten there, but it is one of my honorable mentions. So besides those 1-drops, we also have Beogroth, just a great stompy card. I'm also going to put Harvest Tide Sentry here. Predatory Sliver as one of the only lords in common. And Dust Shell Crasher. So this is one of the facilitators of the green counters. Goes well with the white counters as well. And then let's take a look at the card advantage in green. So green has Winding Way. This is one of the best cards in Historic Pauper, in my opinion. It also has Survivor's Bond, which is less good, but you can very often get back an elf and a human. And then, besides the spells, you also have your cantrip creatures here. So, Elvish Visionary, Llanowar Visionary, Cyril's Packmate, and Owlbear. These 4 just form a perfect curve, and they're quite good. Having bodies and drawing cards is good. Right here is Chatterstorm. I'm going to put this right here. Chatterstorm is obviously banned in Vintage Pauper, but it is legal in Historic Pauper, and it's Storm. Into the north, so this is a rampant growth, but most notably, Historic Pauper has the Snow Duels from Kaldheim, so this is pretty good for fixing your mana in multicolored decks. It is rampant growth, but it is one of the only ways to get perfect mana in Historic Pauper. Skyshroud Ambush. I'm not sure if this is the fight spell of choice, but you do get to draw a card if you win, and it pairs great with all your big dorks, right? Ancestral Mass. So I put this here because it's legal in Midweek Magic on Arena Pauper. However, the server we play on does have this card banned. Along with Jungleborn Pioneer, Hexproof. This is the cheapest Hexproof creature. Hexproof is a really linear but strong deck. Trumpeting Herd. This is similar to Cyril's Pachinate, but you do get another token instead of the card, and it's just so strong. Having 2/3/3s for 4 mana, it's a really good tempo card. It's a really good just a card to ramp out on turn 3. It's a great staple. And then I do have Bitterhide Krushock here. This is more of a card that combos with Winding Way. Mainly because of the Reinforce. It lets you play combat tricks in your Winding Way deck. And it's a 4-mana, 4/4 trample, you know, with also a scavenge ability. This card just has so many abilities. It's a really good card. List Alana Huntmaster. Elves in Historic Pauper isn't really a thing. Mainly because I think it's better to go for the Soul Warden and Blight Priest version. However, you can draw insane amounts of cards with elves, with the Distant Melody. The problem is you don't have the elves that tap for mana, so you have to you'll run out of mana. Vintage Pauper has the elves that you can tap 3 elves, make 3 mana. We don't have that in Historic Pauper. And then finally, these two are the big dorks of choice, I believe. Greater Sandworm, you can cycle it to get it into your graveyard, and the can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less is very relevant. And then Ravenous Lindworm, I believe this one is used for the life gain, 6/6 gain for life, you know, gotta stay alive if you want to play your big dorks. Alright, and then finally, Pauper staples in other colors. So we have Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wilds for fixing your mana. Radiant Fountain and Sun-Scorched Desert, these are colorless utility lands. These are pretty good, and you know, notably Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, these fetch lands combine well with the red Flametongue Kavu impression card that I forgot the name of already. So Relic of Progenitus is the graveyard hate of choice in your sideboard. It interrupts the Mogwarts combo. It interrupts all the recursion. Notably, it does exile your graveyard as well, so you do have to pay a cost for that. Inventor's Goggles and Bone Splitter, I believe these two are the best equipments. Inventor's Goggles, mainly because you do just get to attach it for free, and Bone Splitter, +2 power for 1 mana is just so cheap and so efficient. Notably, there aren't really that many Artificers that are good, but I'm sure as Historic Pauper continues, it'll get better and better. Gingerbrute, this card is just a great 1-drop aggressive creature. You know, it has haste, it has evasion, and you can even gain life in a pinch. And notably, it's colorless, so a lot of aggro decks look for it. And then I also put multicolored in here. Final Payment and the Electromancers and Anarchomancers. I believe these are probably the best multicolored cards. Final Payment is just a 2-mana murder. Oftentimes, you can sacrifice a creature or enchantment for value, or even just pay the life. Electromancer and Anarchomancer, just having all your spells be cheaper is just so good. We don't have the rituals in Historic Pauper, so you have to rely on these cards if you want cheap spells. Environmental Sciences, this is the lesson package in Historic Pauper. Some of the other lessons are good. The Pest Summoning is good. You know, the blue-red make a 4/4 for 5 is decent. Even the 2/1 flyer and black-white. You know, lessons are just another version of card advantage, and these are usually one of your options. And then Ichor Wellspring, Mind Stone. These cards are slightly different, but you know, These are really strong effects. Ramping to 4 mana is really good, and it also cantrips later. Icarus Wellspring combos perfectly with Deadly Dispute. You know, these are really strong effects. So, notably in Historic Pauper, we have Baseless Agent. Baseless Agent is a 2 mana 2/2 changeling. Seek a creature card of the most prevalent creature type in your library when it enters the battlefield. So this basically draws you more creatures. You know, a 2/2 body that also has all the types is really good as well. This is one of the best cards to play tribal with. And finally, Mirror Enforcer. This is more of a honorable mention at the moment. I don't think Affinity is quite there yet in Historic Pauper, but you know, playing cheap 4/4s is really good. It's just so it's just a good body. All right, that about wraps up the Pauper staples. Check out the description for the link to our Discord server, and I hope you have a great time in Midweek Magic.